How did Meghan Markle become Meghan Markle? Lady Colin Campbell has written the book on the subject. She joins me now from Castle Goring. Lady C, I really wanted to look into the early years of this woman and try and discover why on earth she became someone so twisted, so determined to bring people down, and so different to her other relatives, Lady C. And obviously one of the fascinating aspects to this is she is only the half-sibling of Samantha Markle and Thomas Markle Jr., the difference being, of course, they share a different mother. So do you put a lot of Meghan's ambition and her issues and her very obvious delusions and personality disorders down to the relationship with her mother, Doria Ragland, who we do have to remember, and I don't know if you have sympathy for this, Lady C, but who did, for a long period of Meghan's formative years, scarp her and left her totally without motherly support?
Yes, well, Dan, I think there's so many different issues at play here that I think the first thing is, and if we go off what Meghan herself has indicated, because Meghan has actually, over the years, been very forthcoming. And I think I make the point in my book that one of the big mistakes she has made has been to confide over the years and provide information that really she should have been keeping her trap shut about. But Meghan has never actually been able to understand that sometimes a stray phrase can actually come back to bite you 20, 30, 40 years later. I think Meghan's basic problem is that Meghan has an overinflated opinion of herself, largely caused, I think, by her father overcompensating for being a single parent and spoiling her rotten. And that, in combination with Meghan's overweening ambition, allied to her very ordinariness. Meghan was never as good looking, never as bright, never as pretty, never as anything as she wanted to be. And she has over the years maximized every basic attribute she had, and wherever possible eradicated or minimized the disadvantages. Now, I'm not knocking any of that. I mean, you know, if you wish to maximize your advantages, good on you. But I think the key to Meghan's personality to a large extent is her tremendous self-hatred and her tremendous absence of a sense of self, and also her total lack of true warmth. Meghan doesn't have empathy. Meghan can simulate enthusiasm, and when it suits her, she can be charming. And charm allied to enthusiasm in certain contexts can appear to be warmth or empathy, when in fact it's neither. And
what if the fairy tale was really a power play? From a supporting role on TV to the world's most watched headline, one woman rewrote the script and rewrote the rules as she went. Fans call it vision, critics call it calculation. Tonight, we trace the pivot points, the allies, the exits, and the high-stakes choices that made Meghan Meghan.
I think, she's very determined, and she has a very overinflated opinion of herself. So if you put all of this together, you get a really toxic individual who on the one hand, he has the hide of a rhinoceros and will just, charge through anything and everything. And she has no respect for anyone or anything except the achievement of her desires. I mean, look, for instance, just imagine, Meghan is a middle-class girl whose father earned very good money and sent to the best schools. She was at the best schools, basically surrounded by people who were of superior wealth and superior social position than hers. So I think that would also have fed the ambition as well as the insecurity and the self-hatred. But her father gave her every advantage. And I think as she grew up, and I mean, she said that there were times when people thought her mother was the maid, and she never ever corrected that, incidentally, for what that's worth. And I think we're dealing with an imitation of life scenario here, where Meghan is basically a self-hating woman of color who did everything in her power to pass for white, and passed for white. I mean, if you see some of the roles she had, for instance, I saw a clip on something she did on television the other day. She'd appeared in some, I think it was a movie, and her mother or her sister showed up, and they were lily white. So there was Meghan cast as a white woman in this film. And we all know now that she used to pass herself off as white. And I think there's been a certain coldness that's innate to Meghan. And one has to question whether Meghan might not have been carried by somebody who was definitely smoking dope and drinking while she was pregnant with Meghan. And I suspect these things might well have had an effect upon the fetus. And I basically think Meghan's demeanor conveys the characteristics of a genuine sociopath, a genuine narcissist, and a genuine dark triad personality. I mean, her coldness is quite frightening, and the way she can move on from people is, and say, for instance, the way she decided to just cut her father off when he was of no further use to her. I mean, even narcissists usually have some scruples, but Meghan, none. And the way she set her father up to prevent him coming to the wedding, and then to prevent him having access to Harry's children and to her life. I mean, she's actually a very frightening personality, I think.
Well, yes, and this is what I wanted to get into, Lady C, because you talk about that genuine narcissism, that genuine issue, personality disorder, you might say. But how much of that is nature? How much of that is nurture? Because is your contention, and obviously we have to be careful, but you have spoken in the past of Doria's drug use, for example. Is your contention that Meghan was maybe in some ways born this way? Does that provide her any excuse for some of her behavior? And then sorry, you come in.
Sorry, go on. No, go on.
Well, then I was just also going to link it to Prince Harry as well, because your contention is also that Prince Harry was potentially born with some type of handicap too. So is that why, as a combination, they're so toxic? But sorry, I know there's a lot there for you to get into, so go ahead.
Every story starts with a spark. Early opportunities, elite schools, rooms full of people with bigger titles and bigger checks, fuel for someone who refuses to blend in. She learned fast, polish the strengths, bury the weaknesses, network like it's a sport. Confidence turned into momentum, momentum turned into a brand, and when a chance introduction led to a prince, the spotlight went from studio lights to global glare overnight.
Well, I think it's called a folie à deux. You know, two very flawed, very damaged, very damaging and dangerous people get together. Each one exacerbates the other's tendencies and exaggerates them. And you end up with a level of toxicity that you wouldn't ordinarily have. I mean, there have been movies made about this. A brilliant movie that was made about this was made, I think, most likely in the 60s, Conspiracy of Silence, about the Leopold Loeb murder case, where you had two children who were very bright but very damaged, and they ended up killing a child. It's a very famous murder case in America because the Leopolds and the Loebs were two of the grandest and richest Jewish families they were New York families. And if you're born damaged, that might provide an explanation, but that doesn't actually give you an excuse, because it might give an explanation. But I suspect that with Meghan and with Harry, it's a combination of nature and nurture. I think Harry is basically stupid. He's basically uneducable. Meghan is not stupid, but she doesn't learn. And if indeed her mother's drug and drink consumption, as has been described to both of us by members of the family who observed it at the time. So if and there's plenty of medical research which shows that children on the fetal alcohol spectrum, that they actually have no empathy, they have no scruples, they have a switch that never got flicked on, and it's almost physiological sociopathy, and so Meghan displaying signs of sociopathic conduct, it's intelligible that in the light of what one hears of the way her mother's conduct might have affected the fetus. But it doesn't alter the fact that just because you were born with a defect doesn't mean that it gives you a free pass. Sorry, it doesn't. That's why people who commit murders end up in prison. It doesn't really matter whether they had a good reason or not, or whether they had a good excuse or not. Well, mummy drank. So I shouldn't be held responsible. Sorry, you are held responsible. As long as you know the difference between right and wrong, you are morally and legally culpable. And Meghan certainly knows the difference between right and wrong, as she has made clear on many an occasion when she pompously talks about all the things that we should be doing that she makes sure she doesn't do.
Then came the clash. Tradition versus disruption. Protocol versus personal branding. Every wardrobe choice, every headline, every microphone, amplified. Supporters saw a modernizer breaking glass ceilings. Detractors saw a strategist breaking glass relationships. Missteps fed tabloids. Wins fed the fan base. Either way, the narrative machine never slept, and she was always at the center of it.
And so you need to help me out. What else do you want? Because
Well, I was just going to jump in. I was just going to jump in and ask specifically though about the relationship with Doria. Why is it, given that I think we both agree, a lot of Doria's behavior in Meghan's early years contributed to the very obvious defects that she displays now, be it by nature or nurture? Why is it, Lady C, that she's never blamed Doria for that? Why is it that she doesn't view Doria as the problem that she has been?
Well, because the child that is unloved by the mother, rather more importantly than unloved by the father, the child that is unloved by the mother always wants to have the mother's love. And she wants to have the mother's approbation. And so she will betray the parent who was a good parent. She really was pretty ugly if you stop to think about it.
Lady C!
Really. But sorry, I was making a point and I'm so
well, you were making the point that actually she didn't have a lot of these God-given benefits in her early days.
No, but her desire to have a relationship with her mother.
Here's where it gets icy. Public smiles, private distance. Old contacts out, new confidants in. Family rifts went from whispers to push alerts. Was it protection? Was it positioning? Depends who you ask. What's undeniable? The circle got smaller, the brand got sharper, and the stakes got higher. Because when access is currency, choosing who stands beside you is the biggest spend of all.
Is perfectly understandable in the light of the fact that on some level she would have known that her mother rejected her. Because whether her mother rejected her or not, and whether force of circumstance caused the lack of interaction, the child is going to pick that up as a rejection. And then the child, God, please, I beg of you, Dan, stop showing these hideous pictures of this child. Please, I can't stand it. It's distracting me.
You don't think she was a little cutie pie?
No, I think she was dreadful. And I think, thank God she had a good plastic surgeon. But I think that the relationship with her mother is one of the keys, because her mother also, according to Samantha, every time Meghan went and stayed with her mother and she came back, she had a real attitude. And she would be chippy, and she would be difficult, and she would be abrasive, and she would be tiresome, and she would be trying. So Doria was obviously dropping poison in Meghan's air, even when Meghan was a little girl. And I'm Jamaican. I know the scenario of a certain type of woman marrying a richer white man to, as they would say in Jamaica, improve her colour and her circumstances. And Doria did both. Because Meghan ended up significantly fairer than Doria. And Doria ended up for decades benefiting from Thomas Markle Sr.'s largesse. So I think, and Samantha has made the point, that she feels that Doria was really just there for the ride to exploit her father. And it certainly would go along with a particular type of person. Let's put it that way. And but it also means that Meghan would have been undermined by her mother from she was a little girl, because Doria was busy dropping poison in Meghan's air from she was a little girl. And I think that's another part of the problem as well.
Absolutely fascinating insight as ever from Lady Colin Campbell. And
So, where does the story go now? New ventures, new stages, new causes. Each move weighed against an audience that's already picked a side. To some, she's a master of reinvention, proof that you can author your own destiny. To others, she's the architect of chaos, always one step ahead of the fallout. Either way, the play continues, because in this saga, silence is the only thing that doesn't trend. Stay tuned. The next chapter is already being written.